Tibetan Sage by Tuesday Lobsang Rampa. Read for you by BlueFriend in beautiful BC. Chapter 3. My, the sun was hot. I shall have to find a shady spot, I muttered to myself, and then I sat up and opened my eyes and gazed about with blank astonishment. Where was I? What had happened? And then, as I saw the Lama Mingyar dawned up, it all came back to me, and I had thought perhaps it was just a dream. There was no sun. The place was lit by something which looked like sunlight coming through the glass walls. "You do look absolutely amazed, Lobsang," said the Lama. "I hope you've had a good rest." "Yes, master," I replied, "but I'm becoming more and more puzzled, and the more things are explained, the more puzzled I become. For instance, this light coming from somewhere it can't be, stored up for 1,000,000 years and then shine as brightly as the sun itself." "There are a lot of things you will have to learn, Lobsang. You are a bit young yet, but as we have arrived at this place, well, I will explain a bit to you. The gardeners of the earth wanted secret places so they could come to earth unknown to the earthlings, and so when this was just a low heap of stone protruding above the ground, they cut into the living stone by means of what will later be known as atomic torches. It melted out the rock, and a lot of the gray surface outside is steam from the melted rock. And then, when the cave was cut to the right size, it was allowed to cool, and it cooled with an absolutely glass-smooth surface. Having done the cavern, which is big enough to take the Patala itself, they did some investigating, and then they bored tunnels right along this rock range, which in those days was almost covered by earth. It used to be possible to travel about 250 miles through these tunnels, from cave to cave. Then there was this mighty explosion, which rocked the earth on its axis, and some places were drowned and other places rose up. We were fortunate in that the low hill became a mountain range. I have seen pictures of it, and I will show them to you, but of course, through the earth's movements, some of the tunnels were forced out of alignment, and one could no longer go the whole length as before. Instead, we could visit perhaps 2 or 3 caves before emerging out on the mountain range, and then walking a bit to where we knew the tunnel would continue. Time doesn't matter at all to us, as you know, so I am one of those who has been to about 100 of these places, and I have seen many, many strange things." "But, master," I said, "how can these things remain workable after 1,000,000 years or so? No matter what we have, even a prayer wheel deteriorates with time and use, and yet here we are in light probably brighter than it is outside. I don't understand it at all." The Lama sighed and said, "Let's have some food first, Lobsang. We're going to be here for several days, and we could do with a change of diet. You go into that little room," he pointed, "and bring out some of those containers with pictures on them, and then we will see how the people of long, long ago used to live." I rose to my feet and said to myself, My, I know what I must do first." "Honorable Lama," I said, Can I help you to attend to your body functions?" He smiled at me and replied, "Many thanks, Lobsang, but that is already attended to. There's a little place over there in that far corner, and if you go in there you'll find there's a very convenient hole in the floor. Get over that hole and let nature take its course." I went off in the direction to which he had pointed and found the appropriate hole and made use of it. The room was of a glass smooth surface, and yet the flooring was not smooth. It was mat-like, and one had no fear of slipping. Well, with that accomplished, I thought of food again, so I went into the room at the far end and carefully washed my hands, because it was such a luxury to be able to turn a metal bar and find water would come out of a spout. I washed my hands thoroughly, turned off the tap, and then I felt a warm blast of air coming from a hole in the wall. It was a rectangular-shaped hole, and it occurred to me that my hands would soon dry if I put them in that rectangular hole, and that is what I did, and I think that was the best wash I ever had. The water was so pleasant, and I was keeping my hands in the hole when the heat went off. I suppose the designers allowed a certain amount of time in which people could reasonably be expected to dry off their hands. Then I went to the closet, opened the doors, and looked with bewilderment at the array of containers. There were all manner of containers with pictures, and the pictures were so strange that they meant nothing to me. For instance, a red thing with great big claws. It looked like a ferocious monster and something, and I thought like an earwig. And then there were other pictures which showed what appeared to be spiders dressed in red armor. Well, I passed up those, and instead picked out some which had what was obviously fruit of some sort. Some were red, some were green, others yellow, and they all looked attractive. So I picked up as many as I could carry, and then I saw a trolley thing standing in the corner. It had wheels on it, and I put all these containers in and pushed the trolley thing out to the Lama Mingyar Dondap. He laughed like anything when he saw how I was managing, and he said, "And how did you like your hands washed? Did you like the method of drying them? Just think, that has been here for a few million years, and it's still working, because the atom which powers all this equipment is virtually indestructible. And when we leave, everything will sigh to a stop. All the power will go back into storage, and there it will wait until the next people come. Then the lights will come on again. The lights, by the way, are things which you would not understand, because behind the glass-like surface there's a chemical which responds to a certain impetus by generating cold light. But let's see what you've brought." I handed down the things to him one by one, and he picked out 4 canisters and said, "I think that will do us for now, but we shall want something to drink. In the cupboard above the water tap you will find containers that will hold water. So you fill 2 of those containers with water, and in the bottom of the cupboard you'll find another container with pellets inside. Bring one of those pellets, and we shall have water of a different flavor." Back I went into the, kitchen, and I found the containers just as described, and I filled them with water, took them back to the Lama. Then I went back and picked up a tube which held funny little tablets. They were orange-colored. So with that, I went out again, and the Lama took the container from me and did something to the top, and out popped a pellet straight into the glass of water. Then he repeated the performance, and a pellet popped out into the other glass of water. He then put one of the containers to his lips and had a hearty drink. I dubiously followed his example, and I was surprised and delighted at the pleasant taste. Then the Lama said, "Let's have some food before we drink any more." So he picked up one of the round containers and pulled on a little ring. There was a whoosh of air. With that, as soon as the whooshing stopped, he pulled harder on the ring, and the whole top of the container came off. Inside there were fruits. He smelled them carefully. Then he took out one and put it in his mouth. Oh, yes, yes, they have been kept perfectly, kept absolutely fresh. I will open one for you. Pick which one you prefer and give it to me. I looked at the things, and there were some black fruit with little knobs all over them, so I said I would have that one. He pulled on a ring, and again the whoosh. Then he pulled harder, the entire top came off. But then there was a problem. These things inside were small, and they were in liquid, so the Lama said, "We shall have to be more civilized. You go in, and in one of the drawers you'll find some pieces of metal which are dished at one end, and they have a handle to them. Bring out 2 of them, one for you and one for me. By the way, they are metal, of a silvery color." Off I went again, soon to return with these peculiar bits of metal. "There are other things there, master. Bits of metals with spikes at one end, and others with what looks like a knife edge on one end." "Oh yes, forks and knives, and we will try them later on. But these things are spoons. Dip the ends of a spoon in your canister, and you can ladle out fruit and juice, and then you can eat it or drink it without getting a mess all over yourself." He showed me by ladling out fruit from his container, so I followed his example and put the metal thing in the canister to ladle out a small amount of the stuff. I wanted to taste a little first because I'd never seen anything like this before. Oh, it slid down my throat and left me feeling very gratified. I had not realized how hungry I was. Soon my canister was empty. The Lama Mingyar Dondap was even faster. "We'd better go easy," Lob sang, "because we've been out of food for quite a time." "I do not feel able to walk about," Lob sang, "so I suggest that you wander around looking at different compartments, because we want to know all we can." Somewhat truculently, I walked out of the big room and found that there were rooms all over the place. I went into one. The lights came on, and the place seemed to be full of machinery which shone as though they had been installed only the day before. I wandered around nearly afraid to touch anything, but then, quite by accident, I came to a machine which was already showing a picture. It showed buttons being pressed, and it was a moving picture. It showed a sort of a chair, and a strange-looking man was helping an even stranger-looking man to sit in the chair. And then the helping man took hold of two handles, and I saw him twist the right-hand handle, and the chair rose up several inches. Then the picture changed and showed the chair being pushed along to different machines and doing things to them. It was doing it for me. I turned hurriedly and tripped over the wheeled chair and fell flat on my face. My nose felt as if it had been knocked off and was all wet, so I had damaged my nose and it was bleeding. I pushed the chair in front of me and hurried back to the Lama. "Oh, Master, I tripped over this unmentionable chair, and now I want a piece of something to wipe my bloody face." I went to a box and unwrapped one of the blue wrapped rolls. Yes, there was that peculiar white stuff inside, like a lot of cotton bundled up together. After I had had it applied to my nostrils for several minutes, the bleeding stopped, and I threw the bloody mess of cotton into a container which happened to be standing empty, and something impelled me to look in the container. I was shocked to see that the material just disappeared. Not in the darkness or anything like that, it just disappeared. So I went over to the corner where I had swept all the pus and the general muck, and with a flat piece of metal which had a wooden handle to it, I picked up as much as I could at one go, and then I dropped it in the refuse container, where it all disappeared. Then I went to the far corner, which of necessity we had used for our attention to the calls of nature, and I scraped up everything that was there, and I put it in the container. Immediately all the stuff disappeared, and the container was looking shiny and new. Lab sang, "I think that container should fit in that hole that we have been using. See if it will fit, will you?" I trundled the thing in, and yes, it fitted perfectly into that hole, so I left it there, ready for immediate use. "Master, master," I said in great excitement, "if you will sit in this chair, I can take you around and show you some absolute marvels." The Lama gingerly got to his feet, and I slid the chair in under him. Then I twisted the handle, as I had seen in the moving picture, and the chair rose about a foot in the air, just the right height for me to hold the handles and steer the thing. So, with the Lama Mingyar done up in the what I call wheeled chair, which obviously depended on levitation and not wheels, we went back into that room with all the machinery. "I think this was their entertainment room," Lab sang, said the Lama. "All these things are for playing games. Let's have a look at that box near the entrance to this room." So I turned around, pushed the chair back to the entrance, and I pushed the chair right up tight against the machine in which I had seen the chair instructions. Once again I pressed a button and saw a moving picture. Of all incredible things, it showed the Lama Mingyar Dandap getting into the chair and me pushing him. And then we moved several feet in the room, and the Lama was saying something, so we turned around and went back to that machine. We saw all this, which had just happened. Then The picture changed and it showed various machines, and it gave picture instructions about what they were. There was a machine near the center of the room, and if one pushed a button there, various colored small objects slid out into a tray, so we made our way there. The Lama pushed the indicated button, and with a metallic clatter, some round things rolled out of a chute and into a little tray beneath the chute. We looked at the things. We tried to break them, and then I saw at the side of the machine a little dish thing with above it a curved blade. I put some of the round things in the container, and I pulled down on a handle in fear and trembling to see what would happen. The things were soon cut in half, and in them there appeared to be something gooey. I, always more or less thinking of food, touched one of the insides and then touched it against my tongue. Oh, ecstasy! The most wonderful taste I had ever had in my life. "Master," I said, "this is something you really must try." I wheeled him around to the button, and he pressed it again, and a lot more of these things came out. I took one and put it in my mouth, and it was just as if I'd got a stone in my mouth. After a few moments, though, the outer shell of the thing became soft, and my continued jaw pressure broke through the surface, and then I got the sweetest of sweet tastes. There seemed to be different flavors. Each color had a different flavor. Now, I hadn't the faintest idea what this was, and the Lama saw I was at a loss. I have traveled a lot, you know, Lobsang, and in a western city I saw a machine like this. It had candy balls in it, the same as these are. But in that western city one had to put in money. One put a coin in a slot, and so many of these balls would roll out. There were other machines like it, providing different things. There was one that appealed to me particularly because it had a stuff called chocolate in it. Now, I can't write the word for you. Ah, he said. There it is. There is that word written down here with 6 other words. I suppose they're all different languages. But let's see if this one works. He pressed the button firmly, and the machine gave a little cough, and a door opened in the front, and there we saw different types of chocolate or candies, and so we helped ourselves to so much that we felt heartily sick. I frankly thought that I was going to die. I went to that disposal place and brought up all those things which I had eaten. The Lama Mingyardandap, abandoned in his chair, called for me to collect him in a hurry, so we will just draw a veil over the rest of that experience. Recovered quite a lot, we discussed the matter and came to the conclusion that it was our greed which had made us eat too much of a strange food. So we moved into another room, and this must have been a repair room. There were all manner of very strange machines, and I recognized one as being a lathe. The Dalai Lama had one in one of his storage rooms. It had been sent to him by a friendly nation who wanted to be friendlier still. No one knew how to use it, of course, but I sneaked into the room on many occasions and eventually was able to work out what the thing was. It was a treadle lathe. You sat on a wooden seat and you used your feet together to push two pedals up and down. That caused a wheel to rotate, and if one put, say, a piece of wood between what was labeled headstock and tailstock, one could carve the wood and make absolutely straight rods. I could not see what use it could be, but I took our staves and smoothed them off, and we felt so much better with what I could only call a professionally made stave. We moved about and saw a thing which appeared to be a hearth. There were blow pipes and all manner of heat tools about, and soon we were experimenting. We found that we could join metals together by melting one piece onto another, and we spent much time trying out different things and improving our skills. But then the Lama said, "Let's look elsewhere, Lobsang. There are some wonderful things here, eh?" So I twisted the handle again, and the wheelchair rose about 2 feet, and I pushed it out of the tool room and into a room right across a big space. Here was mystery indeed. There were a number of tables, metal tables, with huge bowls over them. It did not make any sense to us, but then, in an adjoining room, we found a recess into the floor, and printed on the wall just above it, there were obviously instructions on how to use the thing. Fortunately, there were pictures showing us how to use it, so we sat down on the edge of the empty pool and took off the Lama's bandages. Then from the side I helped him to stand up, and immediately he stood in the center of the pool, and it began to fill with a steaming solution. Lobsang, this is going to heal my legs. I can read certain of the words on the wall, and if I can't read it in one language, I can in another. This is a thing for regenerating flesh and skin." "But, Master," I said, "how can that possibly heal your legs? And how is it that you know so much about these languages?" "Oh, it's very simple," he said. "I've been studying this type of thing for the whole of my life. I have traveled extensively throughout the world, and I have picked up different languages. You may have noticed that I have books always with me, and I spend all the time I have to spare reading these books and learning from them. Now, this language," he pointed to writing on the wall, "is what is called Samarian, and this one was the main language of one of the Atlantises." Atlantises, I thought, but the place was Atlantis. I said so, and the Lama laughed at me quite gleefully and said, "No, Lobsang, there is no such place as Atlantis. It is a generic term for the many lands which sank beneath the ocean, and all trace of the lands was lost." "Oh," I said, "I thought Atlantis was a place where they had a very advanced civilization, to the extent that it made us look like country yokels. But now you tell me there was no specific Atlantis." He broke in on my speech and said, "There is so much confusion about it, and the scientists of the world won't believe the truth. The truth is this: once upon a time, this world had just one land mass. the rest was water, and eventually, through the vibrations of the earth, such as earthquakes, the one land mass was broken up into islands, and if they were bigger islands, then they were called continents. They gradually drifted apart, so that many of these islands had people who had forgotten the old language, and they used their own family dialect as their standard language. Years ago, there was no speech. Everyone communicated by telepathy. But then, some wicked people took advantage of knowing what everyone was communicating to everyone else, and so it became the custom that, in communities, the leaders of the communities devised languages which they would use when they did not want to use telepathy, which anyone could pick up. In time, the language became used more and more, and the art of telepathy was lost, except for a few people like some of us in Tibet. We can communicate by thought. I, as an illustration, have communicated with a friend at Shakpori and told him of my exact situation, and he replied to the effect that it was just as well to stay where we are, because there were raging storms which would make it very difficult for us to descend the mountainside. As he said, what does it matter where we are, so long as we are learning something? And I think we are learning a lot. But Lobsang, this stuff seems to be working marvels on my legs. You look at them, and you will actually see them healing. I did look, and a most eerie sight it was. The flesh had been cut right down to the bone, and I thought the only thing to do would be to amputate his legs when we got back to Shakpori. But now, this marvelous round bath thing was healing the flesh. As I watched, I could see new flesh growing, uniting the gashes. The Lama suddenly said, I think I'll get out of this bath now for a time, because it is making my legs itch so much that I shall have to do a dance if I stay here, and that would be something to make you laugh. So I am coming out, and I don't even want a hand. He stepped surely out of the bath, and as he did so, all the liquid disappeared. There was no hole for it, no drain pipe, nothing like that. It just seemed to disappear into the walls and the bottom. Look, Lobsang, here are some books with utterly fascinating illustrations. It shows how to do certain operations. It shows how to operate those machines outside. We must set to work to try to understand this, because we may be able to benefit the world if this ancient science can be revived. I looked at some of the books. They seemed pretty gruesome to me. Pictures of people's insides, of people with the most fearful wounds one could imagine. Wounds so bad that one could not even imagine them. But I decided I would stick to it, and I would learn all I could about the human body. But first, I came to the firm conclusion that food was necessary. One can't exercise the brain without a supply of food, and I voiced my thoughts on the matter. The Lama laughed and said, just what I was thinking about. That treatment has made me ravenously hungry, so let's go into this kitchen place and see what there is. We are either going to have to live on fruit, or we shall have to break one of our rules and eat meat." I shuddered and felt quite sick, and then I said, "But, Master, how could we possibly eat the flesh of an animal?" "But, good gracious me, Lobsang, the animals have been dead 1,000,000 years. We don't know how old this place is, but we do know that it is in remarkably good repair. It's better for us to eat some meat and live than just be purists and die." "Master, how is this place in such a good condition if it's 1,000,000 years old? It doesn't seem possible to me. Everything wears out, but this place might have been vacated yesterday. I just don't understand it, and I don't understand about Atlantis." "Well, there is such a thing as suspended animation. In fact, these people, the gardeners of the earth, were subject to illnesses just the same as we are, but they could not be treated and cured with the crude materials available on this earth. So when a person was really ill and beyond the skill of the gardeners on this earth, then the patients were encased in plastic after having the treatment of suspended animation. In suspended animation, the patient was alive, but only just. A heartbeat could not be felt, and certainly no breath could be detected, and people could be kept in that state alive for up to 5 years. A ship came down every year to collect these cases and take the sufferer away for treatment in special hospitals in the home of the gods, and when they were repaired, they were as good as new." "Master, how about those other bodies, men and women, each one in a stone coffin? I'm sure they're dead, but they look alive and they look healthy, so what are they doing here? What are they for?" "The gardeners of the earth are very busy people. Their overseers are even more busy, and if they wanted to know about the real conditions among the earthlings, they just took over one of these bodies. Their own astral form entered into one of these bodies. They are just cases, really, and activated the body. And then one could be a man of 30 or whatever age suited, without all the bother and the mess of being born and living a childhood and perhaps taking a job and even taking a wife. That could lead to a lot of complications. But these bodies are kept in good repair and always ready to receive a soul which would activate them for a time, and they would respond to certain stimuli, and the body would be able to move under perfect control at the will of the new and temporary occupant of the body case. There are quite a number of these, what we call transmigration people, about. They are here to keep a check on the humans and try to avert and redirect some of the violent tendencies of these people. I find this utterly fascinating and almost unbelievable. How about the bodies on the top of the patala, the ones that are encased in gold? Are they to be used as well?" "Oh, dear me, no," said the Lama. "These are humans of a superior type, and when the body dies, the ego moves on to higher realms. Some go to the astral world, where they wait about, studying some of the people in the astral world. but I shall have to tell you more about this and about the realm of Patra. So far as I am aware, it is only we Tibetan Lamas who know anything about Patra. But it's too big a subject to be rushed. I suggest that we look around a bit, because this is quite a large cave complex. The Lama moved away from me to put some books back on the shelves, and I said, "Isn't it a pity to leave such valuable books on shelves like this? Would it not be better for us to take them back to the Potala?" The Lama, Mingyardoned up, gave me a peculiar look, and then he said, "I grow more and more amazed at how much you know at your very young age, and the Dalai Lama has given me full permission to tell you anything that I think you should know." I felt quite flattered at that, but the Lama went on. "You were present at the interview with those English soldiers. One was called Bell, and the Dalai Lama was absolutely delighted that you did not tell even me about it. What was said, what was done. I deliberately pressed you, Lobsang, to try you out for keeping secrets, and I am very pleased with the way in which you have responded. In a few years, Tibet will be conquered by the Chinese. They will strip the Potala of all the things that made it the Potala. They will take away the golden figures and just melt down those figures for the gold they contain. Sacred books and books of learning will be taken to Peking and studied, because the Chinese know that they can learn a lot from us. So we have places of concealment for the more precious things. You would not have found this cave except by the merest chance. And we are going to obliterate the side of the mountain, so the merest chance cannot be repeated. And you see, we have tunnels interconnecting for more than 200 miles, and the Chinese could not travel in their four-wheeled machines, and they certainly could not travel on foot, whereas to us it is just a 2 days' journey. In a few years, Tibet will be invaded, but not conquered. Our wiser men will go up into the highlands of Tibet, and they will live underground in much the same way as the people who escaped before live in the hollow part of this world. Now don't get excited, because we're going to discuss these things. The Dalai Lama says there's no hurry for us to get back. I've got to teach you as much as I can about as many things as I can, and we shall rely upon these books a lot. To take them back to the Potala would merely be to put them in the hands of the Chinese, and that would be a sorry fate indeed. Well, I think it is time for us to carry out a systematic search of this particular cave, and we shall draw a map of the place. "No need to, sir," I replied. "Here's a map in the minutest detail." End of chapter 3.